In 1918, a man was lying in a hospital bed. He was blind, not from a bullet, not from a bomb. The doctors couldn't even explain it. His name was Adolf Hitler. And at that moment, he was nobody. A 29-year-old failed artist, a man so insignificant that his entire military career consisted of one job: running messages between trenches, not commanding troops, not planning attacks, delivering letters. That was it. That was the man who 15 years later would control an entire continent. So how does a messenger become a monster? The answer isn't what you think, and it changes everything we believe about how dangerous men rise to power.
Part 1. The Nobody. Let's start at the beginning, because most people skip this part. Before the war, Hitler tried twice to get into the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts. Twice rejected. He spent years sleeping in homeless shelters in Vienna, selling small watercolor paintings on the street for a few coins, living off soup kitchens. The art school's rejection letter said his work showed unfitness for painting. They suggested he try architecture instead. He didn't have the qualifications for that either. By 1913, he was 24 years old, living in Munich, with no job, no degree, no family, and no future. Then World War I started. And for the first time in his life, Hitler had somewhere to belong. He volunteered immediately. The German army took him, and they gave him a role dispatch runner. Now, this sounds safe, but it wasn't. Dispatch runners had to carry messages through open battlefields, under artillery fire, through mud, through gas attacks. His regiment lost hundreds of men. Hitler survived 4 years of this. He was awarded the Iron Cross twice for bravery. But here's what his commanding officers also wrote in their reports. He lacked leadership qualities. He was never promoted beyond Lance Corporal, one of the lowest ranks possible in 4 years of war. His fellow soldiers found him strange, intense.
He didn't drink with them, didn't talk about women. He would sit alone and read, or stare. One soldier later said, "We never understood him." So at the end of the war, this is the man we're talking about. Failed artist, lowest ranking soldier. No money, no home, no plan. And then Germany lost the war.
Part 2. The Wound. October 1918, Hitler is in that hospital bed, temporarily blind from a British mustard gas attack. And while he's lying there, the news arrives. Germany has surrendered. The Kaiser has abdicated. The war is over. Hitler later described this moment as the worst of his life. He said he wept, that the room went dark, that he felt the world had ended. Now, historians debate how much of this was real versus performance, but what we know is this. Germany in 1918 was a country in total collapse. Millions of soldiers came home to find no jobs, no food, no government. The currency was collapsing. People were burning money for warmth because it was cheaper than firewood. In this environment, a very specific emotion spread across the country like a virus. Humiliation. And humiliation is one of the most dangerous forces in human psychology. A Princeton study found that humiliated people are significantly more likely to support extreme leaders, not because they believe in the leader's ideas, but because extreme leaders give humiliation a target, someone to blame. Germany in 1919 was a country looking for someone to blame, and Hitler, the failed artist, the lonely messenger, discovered something terrifying about himself. He could speak.
Part 3. The Voice. In September 1919, the German army sent Hitler to spy on a small political group in Munich. It was called the German Workers' Party. It had 54 members. They met in the back room of a beer hall. Hitler went to observe. But during the meeting, someone said something he disagreed with, and he stood up and started talking. The room went quiet. Anton Drexler, the party's founder, watched him and later wrote, "Goodness, he has a mouth. We could use him." Hitler had found his weapon. Not a gun, a voice. Psychologists who have studied Hitler's early speeches describe something unusual. He didn't start loud. He started slow, almost confused, as if he was discovering his thoughts in real time. And then he would build. Sentence by sentence, his voice would rise, his hands would move, and audiences, ordinary working-class German, would feel something shift in their chests. He was giving words to their pain. This is the formula that history keeps repeating and we keep forgetting. Take a humiliated population, add economic collapse,
Then introduce one person who is willing to say out loud what everyone is secretly feeling. It doesn't matter if the ideas are wrong. It doesn't even matter if the person is qualified. What matters is that they make people feel understood. Within 2 years, Hitler had taken over the party, renamed it, grown it from 54 members to over 3,000. He was still nobody on paper. But in that beer hall, in front of those crowds, he was something else entirely.
Part 4. The collapse that created him. Here's what most history classes skip. Hitler didn't rise despite Germany's crisis. He rose because of it. In 1923, Germany's economy collapsed so completely that a loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. People would go to the store with wheelbarrows full of cash. By the time they got there, the price had doubled. In this environment, something happens to human psychology that researchers have documented across multiple collapsing societies. People stop evaluating leaders rationally. A 2018 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that when people feel their survival is threatened, they shift from choosing competent leaders to choosing dominant ones. Not the most qualified person, the most certain person. The one who seems to have answers, even if the answers are wrong. Hitler had answers. They were catastrophically wrong, but they were loud and they were certain. And in 1933, a desperate country handed him power. The messenger, the failed artist, the man his own army said lacked leadership ability, became Chancellor of Germany.
And the lesson. So what actually turned a nobody into history's greatest monster? It wasn't charisma alone. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't military power. It was a specific sequence. A wound, national humiliation after losing a war, an economic collapse that made people desperate. A man with the one skill that matched that exact moment, the ability to speak to pain. And a country that was too broken to ask whether his answers were actually right. Researchers who study authoritarian rise call this the perfect storm model. No single factor creates a dictator. It takes the right wound, the right collapse, and the right voice, all arriving at the same moment. The terrifying part isn't that Hitler was uniquely evil. The terrifying part is that this sequence, wound, collapse, voice, has repeated itself throughout history. And it doesn't announce itself when it's happening. It just feels like, finally, someone understands.